Hey, what's up, everybody? It's me, Danae, and I'm here with a message for you. What's going on, beautiful people? It's Saturday, November 22nd, 2025. I did not necessarily plan to jump on today, but I was, pardon me, summoned. I was minding my business on my couch, and I just kept getting this strong nudge and urge to come to the table. So I figured, since it's sort of an impromptu message as far as I'm concerned, that I might as well break out the Game of Thrones cards, because I've been kind of putting it off to use them for a while as well. So I did pre-shuffle. I did see a preview, but I'm just gonna go ahead and cut fresh and also just start the message from scratch. 9 times out of 10, it'll come up what I was seeing, if it's meant to do so. But I'm gonna just get right to it, because as you may or may not know, sometimes these Game of Thrones cards really consume me, and I can be a little bit more long-winded than I want to be most of the time, because I just get so excited and so engaged in the cards and the channeling of the series with the traditional tarot and so on and so forth. So in an effort to save some time, I'm just going to get right to it, okay? All right, so here we go. Ooh, no way, Jose. Jesus. It's the devil. And in the movie, I can't always say the movie, the series, he was absolutely the devil. Demonic, every negative aspect of human existence is what he embodied. Obsession, lust, envy, deception, cruelty, violence, corruption, and then of course you gotta be fair to consider the human disparity of his situation, and what ultimately may have been the origin of his dysfunction, to say the least, which was a broken home. You know, he was a bastard son, whose father never really quite accepted him. He used him for what, pretty much to do his dirty work for the most part, and as kind of like a scapegoat to his own deficiencies. But he never really fully embraced him as his flesh and blood. And, you know, back in those times, you couldn't really give a bastard child too much, back in like the medieval type times. Shoot, not even that far back for some, you know, in some ways. But a bastard child, or a child that was born outside of an official union or wedlock, didn't really have too many rights to inheritance, or to to carry on the family name, which in that day, the family name was everything. You know, like that there was honor in your lineage and in your bloodline for the most part. And he was never really fully embraced in that regard. And then when he finally was given kind of like an underhanded opportunity to inherit something of value, his own castle, so to speak, or his own space, it wasn't even his to inherit. It was kind of taken by siege. And he also was always under this fear of being overshadowed and overpowered by his father's legitimate son with his legitimate stepmother, that really would have been the rightful heir to any inheritance that his father had left behind. So anyway, there's so much, like I said, I'm going to try not to get too deep into the storyline, especially for those that are not familiar with the series. But there's significance there with all that I'm saying, because it's like, for as evil as his character was projected to be, there was a backstory. There was an origin of their sinister spirit. And it's not to excuse it in any way, shape, or form, but it's definitely to acknowledge it. Like, I don't think anybody necessarily comes here, especially not as a child, an unconscious at first child, predisposed per se to be evil. That comes from grooming and experience and exposure. And of course, the sins of the father are passed down, and so on and so forth. But a lot of that passing down of traumas and cycles and things of that sort are on account of the perpetuation of those cycles while the child is actually exposed to them. So it would only be a matter of someone deciding that the cycle stops with me, or the curse or the trauma, stops with me, and to take the necessary steps and precautions to make that affirmative, to give it a chance for it not to affect whomever is next in line. I'm not saying it's always 100% proof, because some things just by karmic order have to be carried out, and must skip past generations and must be rectified, and kind of cycled out before they can be reset or restarted. But in the case of Ramsey, who this is, who that is in the devil card, like I said, his father perpetuated that cycle of depravity. Is that a word? He continued the trauma by continuing to inflict trauma. So you had already had him, as a bastard in some dishonorable way, according to those and according to those customs at that time. But what's more is that he continued to more or less treat him as an outcast or an extra, or to kind of use him at his disposal and things like that. So it's like he almost never really had a chance to skip the trauma and the generational curse that was kind of looming over his head at birth, because his father didn't do anything to shift gears or to to change the course of that karma. You know what I mean? It just was continuously played out. So anyway, like, I'll say now that what I was seeing in the pre-shuffle is that somebody is under like heavy condemnation at this time. Like, they're being like hung out to dry, strung out, on account of choices and decisions that they've made to be deceptive, to be destructive, to be conniving, to ultimately play for the wrong team, or at least to play for a team at a very high risk, that seemed to, or at least projected to, have a payout of high rewards, but ultimately even the highest rewards that one could have acquired or obtained didn't really balance out to the sacrifice that they made to achieve the rewards, let alone the sacrifice they made of themselves to be more or less, a vessel of this agenda, and in this case, perhaps, an open vessel to lower vibrational energies, whether it be in the form um, of associations, um, maybe even corporations. It could be broadly just, again, like devoting themselves to the societal norms and the constructs of society as we're conditioned to do so, and making no concession otherwise for their spirit, to thrive and evolve. Really just kind of like indulging the flesh, which is where really what the devil is, but exclusively so, you know, um, obsessively so, perhaps, possessively so, possessed by certain obsessions and lust and greed, and again, lower vibrational forces that ultimately are fueled by the fear of survival, and fear in general, but definitely some type of motivation for survival that is caped in the that's often caped in the ambition for prosperity, but it's a very distorted line there, especially when we're talking about the things that the devil or low frequencies offer you, back doors that they open to you, portals that you get access to, and an attempt to almost fast track yourself to things that most people, have to go about the long and hard way to achieve. It becomes such a tempting offer that before you know it, you're finding yourself going down a rabbit hole, sacrificing more and more of your morality, more of your humanity, even your standards, your ethics, for this dangling carrot, this piece of a prize, that seems once in a lifetime, or like you could never get it either anywhere else or at the rate of advancement that is being offered to you. And so, someone, if not many someones, are finding themselves, kind of caught up in the trap at this time because they owe a great deal for contracts that have been more or less unfulfilled, whatever the terms of agreement were. The terms of agreement may have been, it was unfulfilled and dissatisfying to the contract holder, or the one that would ultimately have the authority to uphold the contract. And now, it doesn't make that contract or agreement null and void. It must be paid out or must be settled in some way. And I just heard in blood, so it must be settled some way, somehow. And it's almost like people didn't really read the fine print that the collateral was their very own soul, or if they did, they just kind of bypassed that, like similarly to how we bypass reading all of your out all of your, like, let's say your terms of agreement for things like your cell phone upgrade or even a mobile contract in general. Nobody usually reads all of that stuff. You just sign on the dotted line because at the end of the day, you want your phone, or you want to be able to have the upgrade or whatever the download may be. But really, who even knows, except for the most anal person on earth, what's truly in those contracts, But for whatever reason, there was something quite damning in some of the agreements that people have binded themselves to, and now it's time for it to be settled. There's time for settlement. I saw something even as sinister as there being contracts, like execution contracts that were supposed to have been carried out, and it could be spiritual, it could be physical, I don't know. as my phone just goes off at 8:35, which is 8:08. There were supposed to be contracts carried out to ultimately eliminate individuals or aspects, whatever the target was. And when that wasn't able to be fully delivered or achieved, fulfilled, I guess I should say, there still is a debt, to be paid one way or another. It's still debt to be paid. And ultimately, the sacrifice by way of the soul's collateral is falling back on those that could not fulfill their end of the bargain, or didn't fulfill it to the satisfaction of whomever holds the authority to say so. And most times with the devil card, or with such types of contracts and agreements as that are laced with hidden terms and jargon that you wouldn't probably really understand even if you read it, it was intended for there to be a default, or a breach. So it was never really set up for the contract to be fulfilled. It's like, damned if you do, damned if you don't. You know what I mean? Like, if you do, awesome. But if you don't, it's still a win-win for the darkness, or for the dark side, or whatever it is that we're talking about here. So, yeah, but like I said, the temptation to attempt, with all ambition and force that one could muster up, was it was just too strong to pass up. Like, I literally got the vibes of like what's his name, Judas betraying Jesus. It's like that bag was too hefty to turn down, even though the job itself really couldn't be justified. As someone who had walked with Jesus and been up under Jesus's robe, like following behind him for as long as he had, he knew that there was nothing unjust that was really happening in Jesus's ministry that warranted his ultimate assassination, if you will. But being offered such a hefty, I think it was like 30 pieces of silver or something like that, which I'm sure was a hell of a lot of money back then. It, at the time of his possession, which we realize, that throughout different aspects of the story, that Judas was, I think he was like the purse holder, like he governed the money, and there was some question about his corruption even with that while he was up under Jesus. So he already had the propensity to be corrupted, but to be tempted in the way that he was, and then ultimately to follow through, it's like, after you give the darkness what it requires, and that deal is done, it's like you're discarded. You're really of no value at that point, unless there is yet another job to be done, and you're left to your own devices. And at the moment when Judas was became sober-minded to his actions, and to what he ultimately had set into motion, is the moment that he began to actually feel the humanity of his guilt and shame, on account of his unrighteousness, which was unjustified, But he couldn't backtrack and give that money back. They wouldn't even take it. They called it blood money, the soldiers that he tried to backtrack to. So here he was holding his 30 silver bag, and it was worthless to him in the end, so worthless that he couldn't even live with himself. He took himself out, literally hung himself on his own land. Nothing was worth the weight and burden of the shame and the guilt that he felt for doing something that just wasn't warranted. Like there was literally no justification for it. So that's all. But in the moment of the proposition, he was seduced by the come up, again, by the bag, by the so-called prosperity, maybe perhaps the most money he may have ever possessed in his life that he just couldn't seem to pass up. And you know when would he ever get an opportunity like this again? And yet and still, it mattered very little in the end. And that's ultimately the realization that many are coming to terms with, whether it's something so intense and so, like so dramatic and, whatever, or if it's something far more simple and practical. It's just ultimately a matter of sacrificing your personal integrity for some material gain, or for some promise or potential of material gain at that. In many cases, some didn't even really receive what it is that they were promised to have. And in some cases, like Judas, they did, and it just didn't even seem worth it when they got it, compared to all that they had to go through and give up, and all the risks they had to take. It don't be worth it in the end to get into the bed with the devil. It never ever is. It's only a short-term satisfaction, and in that short term, it'll feel real sweet, almost intoxicating, I can imagine. But when you sober up, you'll be like, what did I do? Where am I? How did I get here? Why did I do that? And there'll be nothing you can do to take it back or get a do-over at that point. You still would have to face the consequence of your actions before you could then, oh, look at the emperor here. My goodness. Yeah, you have to take accountability for your actions before you could have the opportunity to shift, readjust, start over, reset, any of that, rebuild, regenerate, recover, because you're definitely going to have some losses whenever you make a deal with the devil. There's always going to be something sacrificed. And this emperor maybe it's just somebody that, is realizing that they have to face those demons that have been in the shadows, that realizing that they've been allowing those lower frequencies to rule over them, as opposed to taking self-control over it, or rule over him, let's say, as opposed to taking self-control over self and over them, meaning the so-called demons, or those dark aspects of self that are unsavory, maybe even undesirable to himself, because the emperor upright is the emperor, but the emperor has a responsibility and should assume accountability for how they act and respond. Like there's a great deal of again, responsibility on the emperor's shoulders to be a prominent leader. And as it is with most of our leaders, sometimes they can get caught in the power struggle between their demons and even their pride and ego. And ultimately, before they know it, those energies are taking the wheel of their actions and reactions more than their own personal consciousness truly is. It could even be subconscious traumas and deficiencies that have either been suppressed, or have been ignored, or in worst case scenario, because the devil with Ramsey is he, it wasn't no suppression in his evil. He operated, it was known that he operated fully in his darkness. I don't think there was any real light about him, quite honestly, unless he was using a light illusion to manipulate. He even used that as a way to cause harm. So I don't know. This feels like a leader with these two cards. I'm gonna get another one, but it feels like a leader that, I don't know. Let me get another card. Let's see. Because I mean, that is, what is that? That's Jon Snow, who we know is one of the most upstanding characters next to Ned. You know what I mean? Ned Stark. But he's like the hero of the story. And in the end, they did have a fierce battle called the Battle of the Bastards. That was amazing. But here's the King of Swords. See? So, and the thing is, this King of Swords, even in its upright, this is the Night King. Another antagonist, as Ramsey is, the ultimate antagonist, as a matter of fact, because that's who they spent the entire series trying to figure out how to, well, for the most part, after discovering it and acknowledging his existence, figuring out how to defeat that existence. So it's like a leader that, damn, like that. You know how you could have an angel and a demon on your shoulder? It's like somebody at this point that might be completely consumed and possessed by their darkness. I wanted to keep hope alive because, like I said, it's Jon Snow and it's the Emperor who has control, or at least has the capacity to control their actions, their reactions, their responses, their engagement. They have that capacity, but it's the matter of choice here. Is as if someone has willingly given themselves over, as I said earlier, as an open vessel to the dark nature in themselves that is natural and supernatural. It's like somebody literally surrendering to all of the lowest frequencies of themselves that they already embody or have cultivated, again, by way of their experiences, their traumas, the sins and corruptions and the cycles and the curses that have already been. It's like they've assumed all of that in their being already, like no fight against it, I'm going to use it to my advantage. And then it's almost been magnified by the agreements that they've made outside of themselves, perhaps with even other sinister characters that they've aligned themselves with, or just kind of activated their I don't even know, like it's like maybe where it was kind of like covert at one point in time, and there was this facade of honor that someone was still able to maintain. It's like somebody is slowly changing over to being fully possessed, but willingly so. But it also, like I said, it could be again on account of this failed mission or failed or unfulfilled agreement where, like I said, this is the collateral here that's being recovered or collected. Like somebody's soul is being collected. So they already had the propensity here with this icy King of Swords. Like, I don't even know why they made him the King of Swords. Like, I would have seen him being more of the devil. I mean, Ramsey was on another level, of course, but I guess it was because Ramsey had a lot of fire and passion behind the things that he did. Like I said, it came from a really dark place for him if you really, got into him like that. Whereas the King of Swords was almost robotic, almost like Walking Dead. Literally, there was no emotion behind their march, behind their agenda. It was just to conquer as many souls as possible. So it's like somebody's becoming almost like a zombie for the dark side, But this is a dangerous type of villain because they're losing their humanity. This is weird. How can I say this? It's like there could have been a narcissist anyway, and we know how hard it is for a narcissist to emote, right? Or to be empathetic. But it's like they're losing all sense of humanity. Anything that would even, usually with narcissistic tendencies, you at least learn how to create a facade of humanity, of empathy, of caring by way of kind of mirroring what you see and what other people do. It's like somebody is not even consumed by that anymore. Like they don't even care to, or they're not able to, because they've lost all the grasp of consciousness, and self-control to even try to look like they give a damn. It's like a mask is falling off to reveal not only who someone always was, but even this darker advancement here that is rendering them completely soulless, Like it could, with all this sword energy, it could be evident in how someone is talking, the things that they say, like how cold and callous they are. It could be evident also with the devil being so fiery and the impulsive actions that they take with very little care about how it affects anyone else, how it's regarded, how maybe even how they could put themselves in harm's way, or put themselves in line of objection. It's like somebody that used to have a really good grip on how to kind of blend in and look the part of a fearless, honorable leader is completely losing all sense of that at this point. And they're looking real scary out here to the average man. Let me see what else. It's like what little bit of humility and honor and honesty and loyalty someone had is being iced out or burned out. I don't know, maybe one and the same in some type of way. Hell is freezing over. I just heard that. Whatever that means. Ooh, and this is the card I saw earlier too, Trader. Yeah, and this was part of the prompt about the whole Judas bit. Wow, and that's the Ten of Swords, by the way. And, see, this is that assassination. This is when John was ultimately assassinated by his own crew, by the brothers of Castle Black, because they were in disagreement with how he allowed the wildlings, which were like the outcast tribe, of the outcast tribe beyond the ice wall that they were guarding to pass through to safety, to escape the King of Swords, which was the Night King. It was like somebody didn't. Is this all one person or is this multiple people? I mean, it could be multiple people. And like I said, somebody that had some sense of humanity and maybe even humility just got themselves entangled in a web. Because I did see the Hierophant got themselves entangled in a web, and it's like this merging of the energies. It's probably because this person is more or less the human sacrifice, the living sacrifice. Something about their energy is being absorbed into this association, this whatever the hell this is, but it could definitely be a few people, multiple people, even more than a few, like multiple people here that someone has really kind of pledged themselves to, and they owe such a great debt that there's no other way but to pay with their own life. And here it is with the traitor energy. Like I said, this was a brotherhood this was on account of a brotherhood betrayal, of which was just a minor disagreement that was blown up to be something much bigger. But it was it was spearheaded by those that really were jealous of Jon Snow in the first place. They never really wanted to see him prosper. They were jealous of his power and his influence and the love of the people that he just had naturally, and his ability to just lead almost effortlessly. There was a jealousy there that was always the undertone. And the last straw of a chance that they got, they literally stabbed him in the back. They lured him into a trap and stabbed him in the back to his death. But of course, we know he was resurrected in the series. But he was none the wiser, and he was so unsuspecting of this betrayal that with all the instincts and warrior consciousness he had, he never in a million years thought that his own brothers would take him out. And there's something here with that. It's like some type of brotherhood, fraternity, association, coven, society, collaboration, organization, corporation, whatever this is. Somebody pledged themselves to it by way of their devotion, whether it was contractually or just, energetically. And there was a binding here, as I said before, when you start to go down a rabbit hole of things that you'll do, for a damn Klondike bar, you ultimately leave those in your association to have more leverage over you, like almost blackmail, perhaps even, on account of what you wouldn't want to be exposed, or you wouldn't want anyone else to know. And it's gone so deep and so dark at this point that either someone, like I said, has just completely lost themselves to the integration of this organization, or they're so contractually binded, as a matter of fact, that the things that they are finding themselves having to do, or ways that things that they're finding themselves having to do to repay their debt, are just like completely washing out any semblance of integrity and good character at this point. So like I said, it literally could be somebody facing their demons in the human form, like reflectively as other humans in their midst, or it could be an internal struggle. You know, either way you splice it, someone is losing or has lost all control. And it's really because they are living in fear, yet again, that illusion of fear, that they have no choice but to surrender to whatever the terms are, whatever the demands are of this binding. Or else, usually when cases like that, it's pride that's on the line, you know, or ego, because no man really and truly can hold you hostage unless you surrender yourself. You know, so whether somebody is afraid that some information is going to be let out or circulated, or even if they were afraid to like go to jail for, you know, for something like that, would be the worst case scenario, other than somebody actually dying, you know. Either way, like, this person would have options, they would have a choice to make, but they're prioritizing the surrender to this dark frequency over the submission to the light, because it's too painful to be exposed. It seems, you know, at least more painful to be exposed in the light, especially to those that were none the wiser, than it would be to think you can continue to navigate this dark corridor till you eventually see your way out. This, you don't get out of this. The more you sell your soul, the more you are the more what do you call it, captivated you become. Look at how he's literally cornered, you know, closed in on both sides, plus the 10 of swords. You don't get out of this dynamic alive as long as you keep on, certainly not in your soul and in your spirit. It'll at least kill your spirit first before your body if it hasn't already, but you don't get out of this dynamic alive unless you decide that the light has more value than the dark. And for some who are still a slave to their ego and a slave to their pride, it really, it's crazy how hard of a choice that is to make. And that's why it's dangerous to get into bed with that force, because it's really rigged for you to fail and for you to be in debt ultimately for the rest of your waking life if you allow yourself to be. It could even be like somebody's, I was about to say, like somebody's addictions with the devil that are starting to like break them down slowly but surely, where they're giving all of their energy, like their mind is always on the next fix, the next drink, the next screw, the next, you know, sinister plot plan. Like, there's so many things people could be addicted to that are super serious and that aren't so much. But it feels like that could be an aspect of it too, that somebody is letting their addictions like completely take over their mind at this point where their body is breaking down. Again, it's starting to be evident in how they move and how they speak, how they present themselves, how they dress, maybe the course that their life is taking, you know, the unfortunate events that are happening in their life. Like, somebody's starting to wear that dysfunction on their sleeve, perhaps in a way that they don't even realize is revealing. Yeah, with the Knight of Cups, it's like somebody that don't know they reek of alcohol. You know, when they're going to work, they don't think anybody can smell the alcohol coming out of their pores or on their breath. You know, they think they look like they got it all together, or they're just blending in, or they just look like their natural self. But it's like, no, it's starting to show. It's starting to show. It's starting to show. It's starting to smell. It's starting to speak. You know. Let me get another one. Two of Coins. Yeah, maybe showing up in someone's finances, their resources, or their ability to function and balance, maybe to even manage their resources, to pay their bills. Yeah, that practically, you know that. If you have an addiction and your money's going all to a bottle or a pill or a bag or whatever you fancy, that definitely starts to show up in your finances, where you're robbing Peter to pay Paul, but more so trying to pay Jake, the drug dude, or trying to scrape up a couple dollars to go get you a quick bottle, a quick shot or something, because your mind is telling you that you need to have it. And if anything, this Ten of Swords then becomes somebody that ultimately has betrayed themselves, you know, by this perpetuation of the cycle that they had all the faculty to overcome with this Emperor here. Like, somebody had the goods. They have the skill set, they have the strength, they have the intelligence. They even maybe had the favor, you know, at one point in time to overcome these dark influences, but either they did fall short, you know, succumb to them, or they are slow, I can't even say slowly, but maybe slowly but surely being brought to their knees, like almost, you know, coming to their rock bottom point. All right, let's see. One more. Oh man, yeah. This is the point where recovery is, oh my God, this one is real bad, because this is like actually the depiction of like the seven sisters pretty much like embalming a body, or, you know, preparing it for their version of funeral or whatever it is that they used to do. So it's even more final and absolute than the traditional deck, where it could be somebody just needing to recover, you know, needing to lay down, take a nap, meditate, pray, take a break from their normal routine and activities, particularly the self-destructive ones, retreat from negative influences, people, places, and things. Like, that would be the traditional aspect of the Four of Swords. But in this case, it's like somebody's already man down. It's like it's too late. They've already succumbed to their injuries. And most of it was self-inflicted, if I'm honest. I mean, because even Jon Snow had this, unfortunately, he had this projection of like a derogatory label over his head as a bastard. Come to find out, he was never a bastard, but his uncle, who acted as his father, never got a chance to tell him the truth about his lineage and the truth of his origin. So he lived most of his life almost to the bitter end of the series thinking that he was some type of outcast, or, you know, not derelict, because that's more than, but like, you know, just some type of like outcast of society, when he actually wasn't. But how that played on his self-esteem and his psyche was almost, I'll say it could have been, and in some cases it was, a blockage for him, except that no matter what the projection was on his potential, everywhere he went, he looked to make an exception, or be an exception, I should say, more than anything. Almost subconsciously, I would say, is how it played out throughout the series. Because when he was outcasted to Castle Black, where he was supposed to be with, the rest of the misfits that society didn't want, the downtrodden, or the thieves and criminals that, got sent pretty much there as almost a punishment in some ways, he still ended up rising to the occasion of his leadership, and being an example and an inspiration to the others, and teaching others how to fight the way that he would, So it's like, when it's in you, 911, 911 on the clock just now as my phone lit up. When it's in you to break the cycles that are even projected on you that don't even belong to you, there could still be a struggle, but it still is possible. It could be said that Ramsey barely ever had a chance, because again, it was a perpetuation of trauma, that there was no error in. But like I said, there's always a possibility to break the cycle and break the mold if you have the heart and the will to do so. But as I said, this was someone that had the support, they had the faculties, they had the potential was all there. And I mean, so it's like as I'm speaking about Jon Snow, his whole life he was told he was nothing but a bastard. And he still made something of himself. So I'm saying that somebody could have had a chance to overcome the things that may have been relevant by way of authentic experience, and the things that were illusionary projections, which we all have a little bit of both, looming over us at any given time, just societally, if nothing else. And it's just given that, someone it's not looking like someone has had some are, I'll say this because I don't want to project anything final, but some, as I said, some have fallen, and some may still have a chance even still to resurrect, if you will. Because as it was the case with Jon Snow, he did come back to life, and that's when he truly came into his purpose and his power in a profound way. Otherwise it could have been the end of his story, and it would have been a very sad one at that, because it turns out that his presence was very much needed for the future of defeating this here Night King. So he got a second chance to live to his fullest potential. But some may be so favored, and some may not, and I don't really know how that determination is made. It could be, like I said, a covering over some's life that gives them that unlimited or multi-purposeful opportunity to get it right. And then there could be some, ultimately, like Ramsey, his entire bloodline was wiped out. There was no consent. He killed his little brother. His dad I forget how the dad died. I think the dad was killed. The dad was killed, I believe. The little brother, he killed the baby and the mom. So there was no chance for, there was no heir. So that bloodline was completely cut off. And so maybe that's something that's to be said here, that those bloodlines that just can't get right, they haven't proven themselves to have any hope or glimmer of hope as far as the divine is concerned, of changing course and, evolving beyond their curses and traumas, their recycling of darkness that might be being filtered out, particularly in this season, which is heavy on the endings and heavy on the death. You know what I'm saying? And there could ultimately be, like a death and rebirth. Yeah, that's what we're talking about here. Like a death and rebirth for those that I guess do in some way prove to have some value to the divine, and have proven perhaps to have the potential to fulfill that purpose for whatever the agenda may be. I guess it'll all be told soon enough. It'll all be told soon. But there's still a great debt to be paid, because I'm looking at this right now. It's a Lannister always pays his debts. That was the motto of the Lannister family, that seemed to have a lot of money, but really they had a lot of power and influence, even more than they had money. So there's still a great debt to be paid for actions that have been taken, even the ones that have been self-inflicted. That must be rectified. But how so? I guess it remains to be seen. And with this Two of Pentacles almost in like an 8, there's a potential for a new beginning here, but it would need to be a new beginning of a new cycle, not recycling the old. Like, if that, it's almost as if that will be cut and thrown to the fire before it even gets a chance to, like, regenerate and regrow itself in this season, in this era. If it's not going to be in alignment with the spirit of the times as it is, it's ultimately going to be eliminated. So that makes the choice to shift that much more pivotal for those that actually have the privilege of a second chance. This could even be like a near-death experience that someone has, where it's the wake-up call that, they didn't know they needed. Maybe an overdose or an accident, or just being put in a really compromising position, even with the company that they keep or the associations that they're a part of, that finally they come to this 10 of Swords, almost like I said, rock bottom position. And it's the only thing that would get them to have a new perspective, to finally hang these traumas up, this 3 of Swords behind him on the wall, and opt out for the truth and nothing but the truth. But it's like, damn, somebody really had to go the hard way to get to that point. Like, somebody really went through the trenches, dragged themselves through the mud, through the fire, to the limit, to the wall. Like, just to get to the point that they ultimately had the chance. They always had the chance to choose in the first place. They were always being prompted to choose in the first place. That's really a hard head type of lesson to endure. that's like primitively speaking, practically speaking, because I'm looking at this Knight of Cups, it's like somebody having close calls with like drinking and driving, whether they get into a small little accident themselves or they get a DUI, or there's some small warnings that, well, not small, but like there's some warnings along the way that keep cluing this person to the fact that they need to stop drinking and getting behind the wheel, only to come to the point where they either get in a bad crash themselves and hurt themselves really bad, or God forbid hurt someone else. And now it's the wake up call, like, or go to jail, and it's like, oh damn, I guess I really should stop drinking and driving, or maybe stop drinking at all, type of energy. But it's like, damn, did somebody have to get hurt? Did you have to get hurt just to come to that bright idea? But alas, some people do have to learn the hard way. Oh, and here's the Hierophant again. See what I'm saying? Yeah, and the Four of Coins. The Hierophant and the Four of Coins. Yeah, it's given that whatever judgment, because judgment came up a couple times throughout my pre-shuffle, and the Hierophant sometimes can be like a judge. It's like whatever verdict has been, that could actually be, like I'm saying, like somebody has kind of faced some type of prosecution or persecution. It's not, it's balanced with this Four of Pentacles, but it's also not letting up. Like there's no leniency here. Like maybe somebody has kind of exhausted their grace in terms of like get out of jail free cards, or slaps on the wrist. Like it's at the point now where someone really has to face the effects, dare I say consequences, of their actions. It's like I said, you get pulled over, and this time you're not just getting a warning, you're going in handcuffs, you're going to have to bond out or see a judge, and there's going to be a hearing. Like you're going to have to, like for instance the Karen Huger thing, where she had like 2 or 3 DUIs before the one that finally put her behind bars. Now she's out now, thankfully, and I'm sure she is grateful. But it's like, damn, how many DUIs do you get before you have to start being accountable for your, for your destructive, your not destructive, well, it was destructive because she got in a terrible accident and destroyed her character on national TV. But your what's the word, like your risky behavior. It's like somebody's gotten off scot-free or by the skin of their teeth so many times that they may have started to get comfortable with that reality. Like they have that level of favor. They can always get themselves out of a bind or a sticky situation. They always know the right person, or have the right connection, or have enough money, or have enough influence, can say the right things to really get themselves out of anything. And now it's at the point where it's like this judge. One thing about the Hierophant being Varys here, who was in the series, it's interesting that they make him the Hierophant, but he was very objective. Like he really didn't have any allegiance to anyone in particular. Like his objective was always so-called for the good of the realm. So when he put his weight behind a particular agenda, or a king or potential king or queen, it was because he felt it would be in the best interest of the kingdom overall, or the 7 kingdoms. It really wasn't, any type of prejudice per se. I mean, I guess his own prejudice by way of his judgment of what he thought was best. but it wasn't like, oh, I just like you, or I'm getting paid to like you, so I'm going to put my weight behind you. It was always like for this greater purpose, so-called. Now his methods were quite questionable. Like he definitely moved in the shadows in the name of objectivity, but I feel like it's interesting to have this here because no matter what, he was always grounded in his convictions. And that's what I'm getting here. It's like somebody that is more or less like judging a situation or has the authority to make a determination, and they're very grounded in what they see and what they decide. It's not necessarily on a matter of it could be by their own merit and principles, of course, which could be in question subjectively, but as far as they're concerned, and for all intents and purposes, it's like measuring somebody, judging somebody by their actions, by their record, perhaps by the scroll of their like their track record, and saying for these evidential reasons, hereby I sentence you to X, Y, and Z, or I find you guilty and therefore sentence you or not guilty, whatever. But in this case, it's like somebody's handing down a fate. I see something here. I just want to see what it is. It's peeking out at me. Somebody's handing down a fate that, yeah, damn, with the 8 of coins, and it's like damn near sweatshop energy there. It's like somebody, their fate is to have to work off this debt, by any means necessary. And man, in this case, as I said, there's no leniency. It's like this is the debt you owe. This is how you repay. Maybe even given a time frame of when someone needs to repay by. Hence why this hard work energy is here with the 8 of coins, where somebody has no choice, back to that again, or at least they think they don't, but to either do their time, whatever that means, or to do whatever they need to do to pay this debt, or else this outstanding debt. And really, like, what is given is like, what I'm seeing here is that the karma of it all, here it is. Okay, this is the best case scenario for someone that is condemned in some way, shape, or form by their actions, justifiably, that they get a second chance. And if they don't submit to the terms of that chance, whether it be second, third, whatever, of this, that's the only lenience that I'm seeing here, is that there's a potential for a regeneration, another chance. If they don't submit to those terms of this, this terms of their release, let's say, so to speak, or supervised custody, or whatever this is, the consequences are far more harsh than what it is that they may have to endure in order to pay back this debt or to fulfill this agreement. But the rock and the hard place is that fulfilling the debt and or the agreement is hella hard. So, if you understand what I'm saying, so it's like someone might be tempted to try to weasel a way out or sidestep, the terms of the agreement as they are, because they're so hard and strenuous and strict, perhaps, demanding. But they don't really have the luxury of doing so, because if they somehow default on these now new tier on this now new tier of agreement or conditional terms, let's say, this is what they're going to succumb to for sure, and there will be no coming back from it. So it's like really a tough thing to, they could go take their chances with the dark side and get ran into the ground, you know, being a vessel for the darkness and doing pretty much a slave to the darkness, or they can take the terms of their release, accept the terms of their release in some way, shape, and form, which are also hard. That's what those are the like lesser of two evils that some are being faced with at this time, and not really being able to quite say or project how long these so-called new terms may be, or if they will honestly, I feel like it's more so if they will have the capacity to withstand them, like this hard labor, this hard work, to really be devoted, dedicated, and stable in this agreement. In order, it's like being on probation for like 8 years, let's say 10 years, 8 years, 10 years under supervised, what is it called? Something supervision or something like that, whatever they say. But you a drug addict, you know, but you have like this, you know, this, your magnet for trouble, you know, and it's like, damn, how am I going to keep my nose clean and stay on the up and up to make it through these 8 years of supervision, supervised release, I think it is, something like that, where I'm going to be heavily monitored to avoid the consequence of potentially going back to jail or to, you know, the maximum sentence, whatever that may be, which I'd rather not do as well. But do I have what it takes to actually finish out my sentence and keep my head above water to avoid the most undesirable outcome? It's like damned if you do, again, damned if you do, damned if you don't. Because what somebody is facing that's supposed to be the lesser of two evils is really not inviting. It's not like it might be better than the worst case scenario, but it's like, damn, is there a door number 3? And it's like, nope. Damn, I'm way over time. See what I'm saying? Like, these cards, they just take over my life. But I don't pull them out too. Whoop. Oh, I just want to see that card, so I ain't gonna mess with it, because then I'll go off on another tangent. But there's something else under there that was just peeking out at me, so I had to see it. But yeah, like something here, it's like the consequences that some are, like I said, it's like the Judas type of, like the Judas story. It's like, it wasn't even worth it, because what you've won in the end is still damnation, because you're damned if you do turn back to your wicked ways, and you're damned if you don't for some undetermined amount of time, so it seems. And maybe perhaps with good behavior, somebody could shorten their time in half, perhaps from 8 to 4. I'm seeing that as well. But hell, even 4 years is a strong feat for someone at this time, you know, to literally keep their nose clean, to stay on the up and up, to stay out of trouble, to disassociate with nefarious characters and activities, to withstand their addictions, you know, like to pretty much live a righteous life, to say the least of it, as righteous as they can possibly be. That's hard, especially by somebody else's standards, because now there's no control over what that gets to look like. It's all determined by how someone else by what someone else says is righteous or not, or right or not, So some people really put themselves in a pickle that just wasn't, it wasn't worth it. There's nothing about it. There's no coin in the world that could have been worth the amount of stress and burden that someone has inflicted upon themselves at this point. So, all right, well, that's that on that. Like I said, I was summoned and I answered the call. I don't know why this was so important or urgent at this time, but I don't know, maybe just a cautionary tale to keep your nose clean. Maybe literally. Keep your nose clean. And I guess even for, for the seemingly hopeless, it's like, I've said this before, that if you can devote yourself to a greater cause, then it is a possibility that things could progress or be accelerated. There could be an accelerated progression beyond what you may be strapped in for. Like, you might think you in for 8 years of a karmic cycle, but maybe with great diligence and devotion and the same level of intensity that some have invested in the darkness to the light, to being honest and really living in integrity and in truth, maybe it'll shave some time off. Maybe the parole board will have mercy. the cosmic parole board, whatever that is, But who knows? I think that's on a case-by-case basis. So anyway, I think I said that already. All right. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Until next time, as always, I'll leave you with peace.